I did realize, even when we were campaigning, that people were not interested in having another Northerner coming into power at that 2023. And that became a major factor for me.
If you say you want to bring another Southerner who is not Tinubu to come in, the North will say he's going to spend 8 years. And then that will still breach the agreement. And now that Tinubu is incomparably bad, would you say you give him another 4 years? Now, if you get a Northerner who will commence a rule in the middle of the game, would you say that if he spends 8 years, it has not become injustice? It will. Now, if you are in a coalition democratically, how do you choose somebody that will be acceptable by all his colleagues? These are very tough issues.
When you hear people close to him speak about Nigeria, it's as if we live in two different worlds. That is the most frustrating thing for me. We would leave the villa, we would go home. We would watch real people, and sometimes we would drive around, we go home, we mix with poor people. We knew how desperate the country is, how desperately life is, difficult life is, the insecurity level, how high it is. People were losing hope, asking what is the value of this democracy. And sometimes they say, what are you doing there? We thought with people like you, we wouldn't be seeing some of these things. At least, are you guys really advising the president about some of these things?
He didn't go alone to see the president, and he didn't also go alone to meet with Wike.
Okay,
he went with the governor of Ebonyi State was there. The governor of Ogun State, Dapo Abiodun, was there. And then the former governor of Ogun State, Olusegun Osoba, was there. They took him to Wike's house. And when he got in there...
So if you are coming across this channel for the first time, welcome. If you don't already know, I'm a trained journalist with over 15 years experience working in the media in Nigeria. Now, aside the deep dive that I try to do on many of the stories that I serve you on this channel, I'm happy to introduce to you a brand new installment that I hope to produce daily for your viewing pleasure. Beginning from now, I will be serving you with the best of what Nigerian television has got to offer. And this is what it's going to look like. So my job is to essentially crisscross the entire television landscape in Nigeria, bringing you in the process the most topical, the most interesting, the most educative, and I dare say, the most controversial moments on Nigerian television. The good news, however, is that my new commitment would not stop me from still serving you with those stories that Nigerian media are either too busy to report or are not just interested in covering. Now, let's get after it. Former governor of Delta State, Ifeanyi Okowa, recently decamped to the APC. But that's no longer news. What is, however, new are two revelations he made during this interview. The first one is that Atiku Abubakar is leaving the PDP, and that, believe it or not, he regrets running as Atiku Abubakar's running mate in the 2023 general elections. Watch.
Well, Senator Koa, you know this play, William Shakespeare, Julius Caesar. When Julius Caesar was being stabbed by Brutus, Julius Caesar looked at him and said, "A true Brutus? This is what they are saying about you in the PDP." And I would like to mention him. Senator Bukola Saraki says that your decision to defect to the APC is a clear indication of how low politics has gone to the lowest level in Nigeria. And some people are saying this is not even about Oberewori, that you are the person, you are the problem behind the PDP problem in Delta State.
I did not watch Senator Bukola speak, but I heard about what he said. Ordinarily, I believe that we're a political family in Delta State, and once we take decisions together, I have to go with my political family, because without that family, I have no politics to play, number one. Two, I did not expect that somebody like Senator Bukola Saraki should be able to speak concerning me, because he knows that he had also moved to the APC before and eventually returned. So he has had movement to and fro. So I don't think that he has the moral right to even speak about my defection at all. But I don't want to join issues with him. But the truth is, we have a political family in Delta State. Previously, we were in the PDP. But several things have been going on in the party, the People's Democratic Party. While I do not want to join issues with people, but as stakeholders, our leaders in this state have sat down to look at the events in the last several months. And because of the events that we see and the communications coming out from the leadership of the PDP at the moment, it did not appear to us that that was a proper political vehicle for us to continue in, because it did not also appear to us that PDP was ready to be competitive in the 2027 elections. So if a party appears on its own as led by the current leadership to make a decision that they were not ready, they are in opposition with much fewer governors than the All Progressive Congress, and the party comes into a decision-making meeting and they take a decision that there was the need for them to continue alone, and they were not ready for alliances, they were not ready to have mergers with other political parties. The question is, how do they truly want to compete? And having looked at this very thoroughly, along with many other things that have been going on within the party as to various court cases, as to who exactly is the national secretary of the party, and many other issues, we do not appear to be really ready for competition in the 2027 elections. So having looked at this, alongside the fact that we believe that as a political family in Delta State, we needed to be able to move ahead, to truly connect to the resources. As I did say yesterday, it's not about a borrowery. Yes, he's the leader of the party as the governor. It's not about me. It's about the larger Delta State and the larger political family that we have. And I thought, in my own opinion, and in the opinion of the vast majority of leaders, because we had different levels of consultation. It was not just a question of a decision of the governor or a decision between the governor and Dr. Kowa. We had various levels of meetings with several stakeholders, and even had to make consultations with some of our other leaders who are not even politicians before we came to this decision.
You said you want to connect to Abuja. Are you saying the PDP in Delta State was being sidelined by the center, number one? Number two, you spoke of coalition talks that you were also a part of. Were you sidelined in those talks as well?
In the first instance, the question is not about the PDP as a party being sidelined. The fact is that at the moment, if you are a governor in a ruling party, you are likely to have greater access to goodwill and resources from the party at the center. We have continued. I was governor in opposition for 8 years. And I know that though we tried to do our best in the state, we could not lay our hands on a lot of things that would have been able to benefit at the federal level, because it is obvious. It's easier for you to be able to connect to Abuja and to be able to attract both resources and investment in your state if you are within the discourse, the floor of discourse at the national level. But as an opposition governor, you are not able to get all that you want. You could do your best, but you're not able to get all that you want. For 8 years, we did that. If I had the confidence on my own, and if the governor had the confidence that the PDP as it stands today is prepared to compete favorably and be very competitive at the 2027 elections, we would not have needed to move. But the signs are not there. Because if you're going to compete, it is necessary to reach out to people. We are not spending our time reaching out to people. There's a lot of internal wrangling within the party. And as I said, I do not want to join issues with any of the leadership. because they are doing the best they can within their own thoughts. But those thoughts do not seem to go well with us, because we believe that for us to be truly competitive, we must stretch out our hands to embrace a lot of people. We must be the people going out to reach out, not waiting and believing, oh, people, if they want to join us, they should come and join us. That is not the way to go. I truly want to be in a situation where my political family in the state and Delta itself, Delta State as a whole, is returned to the corridors of power in Abuja. And I think it is in the best interest of Delta State for Delta State to be returned to the corridor of powers in Abuja. And that we do not seem to have it play out within the current PDP.
You were the vice presidential candidate for the PDP in 2023. But all of a sudden, when the coalition talks led by Waziri Adamawa started, it was the same Peter Obi that had moved away from the PDP that came back, Nasir Rufai. Nobody saw you in all of those coalitions. So is this sour grapes? Okay, if they don't want me, I will go to APC. And to put the question concretely, did you speak with Waziri Adamawa Atiku Abubakar before you took this decision to port, as Nigerians say, from PDP to APC?
Okay, in the first instance, I don't think it's exactly true that I was sidelined in the coalition talks, because I know that Waziri Alhaji Atiku Abubakar did invite me sometime last year, and I sat with him and he talked about this coalition, and I did offer my advice at that point in time. And as they progressed, we met once again, and I actually did offer my own advice. The advice I gave to him was personal, and I do not think that it is something that I have to talk about in the public. But the real truth is that it's not a question of being sidelined, but it's a question of whether our people, because it's not just about me, because he did invite me, and I discussed the matter with the governor, I discussed the matter with some of the leadership of our party, and they were not quite comfortable with a coalition that was being built that we're already 2 years. The primaries of the parties will start off on next year. So we're just 1 year away from competitive elections. And it does not appear that a vehicle has been confirmed for that coalition, neither does it appear to us as a state and as a political family that coalition was going to be able to build strength within the short period of time available.
Did you speak to Waziri Adamawa Atiku Abubakar to tell him, look, no deal, we're going in another direction?
Actually, I did communicate with him that we're going to have stakeholders meetings, and I did communicate that we're going to have the stakeholders meetings in this week, that is in the last week, and that it was going to be a leadership meeting, and the outcome of that meeting was going to determine our next path, because we're no longer comfortable with the PDP. And I also know that he was already heading out of the PDP from the communications that he has passed on to me, and that we have also, Nigerians also know already. And when we went into the meeting, as I did say, we're looking into, could it be the APC, could it be the coalition? And as I say, it was a near all decision that we should move into the APC.
Oh,
so to that extent, the communication, we had communications ahead of time concerning that. But about the North-South, the politics today may not be about the North-South, because I believe that both from the North and the South, people are competing, and in all political parties, you're likely going to have people from the North and the South. But beyond all this, for the stability of this nation, I also do believe that, yes, President Bola-Ahmed Tinubu was elected president in 2023, and for the stability of Nigeria, it is best for us to have him complete his 8-year tenure.
Okay.
Then the presidency can move back to the north. I believe that that is the right thing.
Oh, okay.
Why not calling it a north-south thing?
Okay. You listed a number of stakeholders that you've consulted and that you've spoken to. I noticed you didn't mention a consultation with the former governor, James Ibori. Did that take place? Have you consulted him?
We had different candidates for aspiring to be governor in 2023. And thereafter, it appeared we worked in different political parties when it came to the governorship. And since then, we have had our occasional communication. But coming on the political scene, he had already declared his intention to support Mr. President Bola-Ahmed Tinubu, and he had continued to support the president. So as we move into the APC, it all means that we are all now going to work in the same direction in support of Mr. President. So I don't think that there is any real separation between us, because we will all work together. There is no doubt about the fact whether I needed to consult him within our PDP family as at then. He was not part of us.
Were you arrested by the EFCC or not? And is it true that it was Senator Adams Ushomole who advised you that if you join the APC, your sins will be forgiven once you join the APC? And why are you in a hurry for your sins to be forgiven?
There are no sins to be forgiven because no sins were committed. That is number one. Two, I was not arrested by the EFCC. A communication was sent to me, and that communication arrived at my place. I was overseas at that time. And when I returned, I reported to the EFCC to answer to their queries. And as I said at that time, I communicated to the public at that time, I am not afraid of being investigated because I worked for Delta State, and the people, the large majority of the people, they understand that I did work for them.
You've been talking about your people and, so much you did for your people and how much they love you. But when it came to the presidential election, those people didn't choose you.
For those who doubt my political reach, they should wait until the next elections. And for those who did doubt my political reach, by the time we went into the governorship elections, it was obvious who were those that were masters of politics on the field. But beyond that, the issue about the presidential election was such that as of 2023, it was a question of North-South politics. You are very much aware of it, that it was a question of North-South politics. The people of the South were likely interested in a Southerner coming in as president after Buhari's tenure. Yes, I ran under my party as vice presidential candidate because I belonged to that political family, and at that time, it was the best choice. But I did realize, even when we were campaigning, that our people were not interested in having another Northerner coming into power at that 2023. And that became a major factor for me. But a decision had been taken at the federal level, at a party level, and I had already been nominated vice presidential candidate. So what did happen was a question of, I did not seem to follow the path and the thoughts of the people. And I have advised myself that it's important that I need to go with the people. Not because I want to believe in a North-South politics, but generally, when you're a politician, you're playing politics, the views of your people matter. And from the views of our people, which was expressed in the presidential election in 2023, that's why I've also told you that I believe that in 2027, our people are still going to go for a Southern candidate because they believe that it is still the turn of the South.
I think it was Chief Dan Ulasi, right? I think it was Chief Ulasi who made the point that, look, somebody who was commissioner on the platform of PDP, you were also secretary to state government on the platform of PDP, you were senator on the platform of PDP, you were governor for 8 years. You became a godfather on the platform of PDP and even chose your own successor. And then the PDP will just wake up one morning. Even you were running mate in the presidential election, and they will hear that Senator Okowa has left the party. Doesn't it raise a moral question?
I listened to Papa Dan Olase. I respect him quite a lot. And he gave the reasons that, yeah, while he may have his reservations, he has not spoken to me. And I did listen to that way. He said he tried to call me and he couldn't reach out to me. I used the same phone number, and I'm very much aware that I have not seen his call because it's somebody I respect quite a lot. But the truth is, the PDP, and he knows for sure that the PDP as of today, that is not ready to be as competitive as it was in the past, cannot be that same vehicle that we must continue to go along with. And he also said I had my right. And I remember in that conversation, he was also calling for P2B to return back to the PDP. So if he's calling for P2B, who had left ABGA to the PDP, and from the PDP to Labour Party, he's calling him to come back to the PDP. The question is the question of morality in all this. It does not come to play anymore, because that defeats his argument about morality in all these positions. Because if he's calling for P2B to return to the PDP, he's done a lot of movements. I've got to PDP, PDP to Labour Party, and he's asking to return to the PDP. Then why should my movement now become a moral issue?
The story is, however, different for Hakeem Baba-Ahmed, who himself recently resigned as President Tinubu's special advisor on political matters. Now, in his first major interview after his resignation, he talks about a host of issues, including why he suddenly resigned, the rumored frosty relationship between President Tinubu and the Vice President, Kassim Shettima, why he thinks more than half of those working for the Tinubu administration are incompetent, and why he thinks it would be a grave mistake for President Tinubu to run again in the next presidential elections.
Tell us, first of all, why you resigned as Special Advisor on Political Affairs in the office, a specific office of the Vice President. I mean, this may sound like a cliche, but did you jump or were you pushed?
I jumped. I went into the position with very high expectations. I desperately hoped that President Tinubu would be successful. I went in there to work for him and for Nigeria, and I believed that we could work. I was made to understand by the Vice President, who was the catalyst to my going there, that there was space to work, there was a job to be done, and I knew, having campaigned so vigorously for 8 years and against the incompetence and the damage which President Buhari did, that his successor, who also pushed the country into the deep end and promised something close to a revolution, as President Tinubu, was going to follow through and really take Nigeria through the revolution and change it, at least in his first term. So I went in there with high spirits, and unfortunately it didn't work out.
Well, I mean, let's get into a little more detail, because I was going to ask you what was it like working at that level, because that's a very high level. I mean, special advisor. I'm wondering what your job as special advisor on political affairs entails and whether your advice was actually being taken.
On paper, it was a great job. I mean, it was a huge responsibility to be the political advisor to a president in the office of the vice president. Was an enormously important job on paper, but it depends on if it's actually actualized in real life. It wasn't. It was very frustrating.
Are you saying that they were not listening to you, or there was never any opportunity to actually exercise the role that you were put there to play?
There was really, you have to understand the structure of the Nigerian presidency has been virtually the same for the last, maybe since 1999, maybe even during the military times. The number two is always at a certain disadvantage. So much of what the number two does depends on the chemistry between one and two, the configuration, the power dimensions, the nature of the cliques around the president. So much depends on what the number one does. And if the president doesn't really feel that the office of the vice president is not central to his success or useful, you just sit it out. We've seen that many times, and basically this is what I met and what I left behind. There wasn't much to do. I wasn't used to sitting idle, and there was a lot to be done. If I had been involved, I could have offered my humble advice or opinion, but I wasn't. And I couldn't just be collecting salaries and just sit down doing nothing.
Well, let me pick you up on what you were saying there, because there are all these reports floating around that the Vice President, Kashim Shettima, is being steadily and systematically isolated by the Tinubu ring or clique of supporters in the presidency. Is that a fact?
No, I didn't see any evidence of that.
But you said that it depended a lot, your job depended on the chemistry.
You're talking about my job. Now you're talking about the working relationship. We were talking about, did I do any serious work? Did I, was I...
No, but I'm wondering why you didn't get to do that serious
like
work.
I said, it's not peculiar to me. Many vice presidents, many people who had worked with vice presidents went through the same experience I went through.
Right, but you were suggesting that was possibly because sometimes the principal and his vice don't sort of, the chemistry isn't there, and I'm wondering if he was being pushed aside.
No, I think that there are two different things. The vice president, as an official recognized by the Constitution as the number two citizen, how busy he is, how active he is, what he does and what he doesn't do, substantially depends on the disposition of the president.
Right.
So that's a settled issue. And
irrespective of who it is, I mean, which administration.
I know Vice President Atiku, Vice President Atiku's first time, he was incredibly busy. When they fell out, the second time he was virtually non-existent.
Right.
I also worked with another president whose vice president was idle for a substantial amount of time until the president died. And then that's Jonathan and Malam Umar Radwan. I think, to answer your question, the vice president's office is either busy or not busy. It entirely depends on the disposition of the president. I know that in their personal chemistry, this I know from the vice president, they have the personal chemistry between the president and the vice president is excellent. I hear this from the vice president and I believe him, sometimes almost to a fault. Kashim Shettima always says how great the president is and he's a good man, he means well for this country. And sometimes on one or two occasions I've said to him, but if he's so good, I mean, how is it that we see so many of the wrong things going on? And then, but he would defend the president with his life. I know this for a fact. But it's the way it is set up. You also need to understand, Charles, the presidency is a lot more than the president and the vice president. There are aides, very powerful aides. There are other people who intervene. They can decide whether both of them work well or they don't work well. They can decide if the number two is active or not. They can decide if the number one is active or not. That's how powerful they are.
But you got along well with Kashim Shettima.
Absolutely.
So what did he say to you was the reason why you remained idle, why you weren't being used as you ought to be?
Well, like him, we wait our time. We wait for opportunity. We wait for someone to say, do something.
Right. So was he also pretty much
no, he was
sitting around most of the time?
No, I think he's, in his own case, he filled up some space.
Right.
His own space. He did well. I think he represented this government well. He's an extremely intelligent and hardworking person and very loyal to the president. But that doesn't necessarily reflect on all of us. There were quite a number of absolutely brilliant people in the office. I have met some incredibly good people. He is very good in headhunting. And on his side of the presidency, it's incredible the quality of people that he has there. It's unfortunate, however, that they are not being put to use.
You mean on the president's side or the vice president? Okay,
side.
The vice president.
I was just happened to be the first one to jump, or I don't know whether I will be the first one to jump.
Right.
But I was the one who said no. I got to do something better with my time and my life. There's a country to be fixed, and if I can't fix it, serving and working for this government in this, what you call the cocoon, I can do it outside.
And of course, I mean, there's a lot of politics that floats around, I mean, these things, isn't there? I mean, is it true that you were appointed to give the Tinubu administration northern credibility, especially after a contentious election?
If there was, I wasn't aware of it. I like to believe that on my own merit, I deserve to be appointed advisor on political matters. I didn't need
I think a lot of people would agree with that.
Yeah, well, I didn't need an additional regional stamp to become an advisor. And I didn't see any sinister motive. People say, oh, they wanted to keep you quiet, oh, they wanted to buy your voices and everything. I mean, I started that job, I think, when I was close to 69. I'm 70 now, so I know a little bit about...
Well, you look like a young man to me.
Oh, thank you. I knew what I was doing, and I can tell you that I didn't see any sinister motive or a trick involved in appointing me.
But you must have been quite disheartened, I mean, when you came out, having spent a considerable amount of your valuable time, you know, in such a place, and much use wasn't being made of you. Because, I mean, I say this because you then came out and you've just subsequently written an open letter to the president. You suggested that the president has a closed-door style of leadership, is indifferent to complaints about ethnic bias in appointments, and frequently runs the country from abroad whilst attending to personal matters. And you say that he's become something of an isolated leader heading an insular administration. I mean, that sounds pretty strong.
Well, it would have been easier if it was just about me. Am I busy? Am I lazy? Am I just going there to the villa to feel good? I mean, I have a nice title. I'm an advisor to the president. If it was all about me, quite possibly I would have stayed longer. But I felt I could have been a lot more useful to the country and to the administration. I believed also, I don't like for this thing to sound boastful, I believe I had something to offer.
Indeed.
Which was the reason why they asked me to go there. Not to sit idle and to watch a lot of things going wrong. And you don't have an opportunity to fix them. You don't have an opportunity to engage the president, who has all the powers to be engaged. You don't have any channel. I saw the vice president virtually every working day. We talked, we discussed the country. But Nigeria requires a lot more than talking with the vice president.
But did you have an opportunity to meet the president?
No, I didn't.
For your entire time there?
No, I think I met him. I saw him 3 times in the mosque in the villa, and
From a
we
distance.
sort of shook hands.
Right.
No, shake. There's a mosque in the villa, so
Right.
you would see. But I never had a chance to sit down with President Tinubu.
And why do you think that was the case?
I honestly don't know. I think I think part of the problem is that he never really had time for people like us.
People like you? I mean, you were a special advisor.
Yeah. I'm not sure he had time for a lot of the people working for him. you quoted a part of the letter that I wrote to him. I used the language very carefully. Said it was insular, isolated. That's not a lazy, the words you use casually. The president really is genuinely isolated. Whether it's by choice or by circumstances we don't understand, the bottom line is he ought to be available to a lot more of the people that he has trusted, either to run ministries or departments or to advise him. And he isn't. And that's a problem for the country, not so much for him. But it's a lot, because the president of Nigeria is a hugely powerful person, and he has
there's a lot of responsibility
on his shoulders.
Absolutely.
So if he's not going to look for solutions to problems from people that he had appointed, there are only two options that are left. Is he getting advice from the wrong people, or is he getting no advice at all? And there are other issues that I raised in my letter. I said somehow I just think when I use the word insular, it really was about, when you hear people close to him speak about Nigeria, it's as if we live in two different worlds. And that is the most frustrating thing for me. We would leave the villa, we would go home, we would watch real people, and sometimes we would drive around, we go home, we mix with poor people. We knew how desperate the country is, how desperately life is, difficult life is, the insecurity level, how high it is. People are losing hope, asking what is the value of this democracy. And sometimes they say, what are you doing there? We thought with people like you, we wouldn't be seeing some of these things. At least, are you guys really advising the president about some of these things? And it all amounts to this idea that the president is either not interested in getting advice, or is getting advice from the people that he hasn't appointed officially to give him advice. Either way, when I use those words, insular and isolated, very carefully, because that's exactly how I read it. I believe if President Tinubu was more open to suggestions and advice, and if he has higher quality of people handling sensitive positions for him, and he makes himself available to them, and they talk to him, and he tells them, they tell him what they think, I think the country will be better.
Is that why your advice to the president at the top of the pecking order, if you like, of sort of the political structure is to step aside and not seek re-election in 2027?
Absolutely. I honestly and sincerely believed that if I had sat down with President Tinubu before I left, that is what I would have said to him. I would have said to him, President Tinubu, I think you achieved a lifetime ambition. It was lifetime. He had done great things to become president. He had done great things to make other presidents. It had worked. It hadn't worked in the past. Finally, it worked. He had done many things for this country. The best thing he can do is not to run for 2027. The best thing he can do now is to look around, get good people, to find younger people, 50 people in their 40s and 50s and 60s, people with a lot of experience. They exist. People with passion and anger in them, and the zeal to actually rebuild this country, to give it a future, and step aside. He can do that with his party. The moment the APC brings out a Nigerian who is in their 40s, in his 40s, believe me, other parties will do the same thing. Because no presidential candidate in his 80s or late 70s is going to start contesting for the presidency with somebody in his 40s. It has happened before, and we need to begin to show some respect for the young Nigerians. We have messed up their country and our grandchildren. We've messed up their country enough.
Kenneth Okonkwo obviously needs no introduction.
If you say you want to bring another...
The former member of the Labour Party in this interview brilliantly proposes a formula on how the opposition parties can produce a unity candidate. He also talked about the fate that would befall the politicians decamping to the ruling APC. And you need to hear how he described one of President Tinubu's media aides. Watch.
Let's start with some clarification. You were very active in the Labour Party. You were there in the court, all the way to the Supreme Court. defending Mr. Peter Obi and the Labour Party, but you switched. In some of your recent comments, you have been saying, well, nobody can remove President Tinubu except they have a coalition. Sometimes I was confused. I thought, okay, maybe Kenneth Okonkwo is now in the APC. Let us clarify where you belong to right now. Are you in the APC? We know you have left Labour Party, or you are on your way to the APC, which seems to be the trend, because you have said no single candidate can remove President Tinubu. So my assumption is that very soon we hear that you are also firmly in the APC. This is the season of defections. What do you think about this current up and down in Nigerian politics?
Well, first and foremost, I do not join a party, or let me say, I do not leave a party because of another party. So I leave a party because of the party itself. And when I want to join another party, it's because of that party, not because I'm looking for anything. When I resigned from APC, I made it clear that I cannot follow a president who is insensitive to our spirit of diversity. He chose a fellow Muslim to give us same faith ticket. Has that changed? I made it clear that Nigeria being a diverse nation, anybody that will not respect our religious diversity will not respect our ethnic diversity. Have I not been proved right? If APC wants me to join APC, these are my conditions. They promised Nigeria that 1 naira should be $1. Have they done that? When they do it, let them come calling, and I will consider them. Nigeria is a diverse nation where the presidency is an association between the president and the vice. And the Nigerian constitution is very clear that every association must cut across religious and ethnic barriers. There is nothing else that this government has achieved for Nigeria. And then contemplating that me, that entered politics for the welfare of the people, shall join an APC that is insensitive to the people's welfare, that has punished Nigerians with hunger and hardship. The World Bank report now said that Nigeria will sink further into poverty till 2027. That in Tinubu's regime, there is no hope for recovery from poverty. And they gave their reasons: structural economic weaknesses, dependence on oil revenue, national fragility. In other words, national conflicts. Look at what's happening in Plateau State. More than 100 persons have died, massacred by unknown people. And the president was in Paris and could not even cut his travel short to commiserate with people from Plateau State. Look at what's happening in Rivers State. A president declared martial law and removed constitutionally elected representatives of the people. And look at what's happening in Benue State. People dying. All the things this president has given Nigeria is tears and blood. And you want to say Kenneth Okonkwo will contemplate going into such an association? I tell you what Dove said, man, said. He said toxic leaders are energy vampires, draining life and enthusiasm out of the people they lead. You want my life and enthusiasm to be drained? No. I reject APC as presently constituted, as a party that does not live up to its promise, as a party that has inflicted Nigeria with hunger and hardship, as a party that does not recognize our diversity, as a party that has given us nothing except tears and blood. A land that God created to flow with oil, with wealth, with gold, is now flowing with tears and blood. Count me out of that unholy association. But now I am a member of the coalition. And we are moving in that direction to solidify the unity amongst all the opposition forces to take out this government that, according to Senator Ndume, is a government of kakistocrats and kleptocrats, the government of worst of us, and the government of desperate thieves. According to Aristotle, he said when man is separated from law and justice, he becomes the worst of animals. And Plato made it clear that man separated from law, is the most savage beast. We have been reintroduced to the state of nature by this government, where life, according to Thomas Hobbes, has become solitary, nasty, brutish, poor, and of course short.
Okay,
that is what we're suffering in this country.
Okay. We appreciate, I love the philosophy and almost spoken word that you're giving us this morning. Very, very inspirational indeed. I love that you've mentioned this coalition, because what I wanted to ask you initially is that the writing on the wall seems to appear that there is a north and south divide. And it's seeming like this grand coalition that is being marketed for the moment, the body language reads towards the north. So are you saying that you're behind a potential movement that will push forward a northern candidate if that's what it will take to defeat the incumbent?
Well, 2023, I was consumed with the fact that there was an agreement between North and South that the North should have power for 8 years, the South should have power for 8 years. And I ran under that canopy. And then we produced a Southern president. However that came. In 2027, it is a different ball game because we are now in the half of the match. If you say you want to bring another Southerner who is not Tinubu to come in, the North will say he's going to spend 8 years. And then that will still breach the agreement. And now that Tinubu is incomparably bad, would you say you give him another 4 years? That we will continue to sink, according to World Bank report, into further poverty and misery? Now, if you get a Northerner who will commence a rule in the middle of the game, would you say that if he spends 8 years, it has not become injustice? It will. Now, if you are in a coalition democratically, how do you choose somebody that will be acceptable by all his colleagues? These are very tough issues. And what I have decided is that, look, there is 4 more years that is remaining. Because we may not be able to choose anybody by selection and make the person to have the buy-in of all the other contestants, let there be an open primary election between North and South in a coalition. Whoever wins should agree to do 4 years to compensate for the injustice that will be meted out to any section. If another Southerner who is not Tinubu wins, he must say that he will do 4 more years to complete Tinubu's regime. If a Northerner wins, then let him do 4 years so that it will return back to the South. Because that is the only way that we may be able to stop this government that has become incurably bad. Where did I learn this from? I learned it from Tinubu himself. In 2015, Tinubu sided with the Northerners against Reuben Abati's principle. And the South-South, they were pleading, let them complete their term. But Tinubu, out of self-preservation, out of the below-con philosophy, he said no. He aligned with the North and chose one of his own to be the vice president. He preferred the power going back to the North rather than remaining in the South, so that it will pave way for him in the next 8 years to become president. And that is why he's president today, because of that strategy. So in between the game, and when the incumbent is found wanting, the only way to move forward is by this method that I have enunciated.
Well, I'm enjoying myself. I mean, listening to you is like I'm back in one of these classes that I took many years ago, Philosophical Problems and Analysis, where we talked about Plato, Aristotle, Jeremy Bentham, John Locke, and all the philosophers. I'm enjoying myself. But let me ask you a question. This coalition that you say you have joined, do you think that the coalition, as presently proposed, can take Tinubu out of power in 2027? And I ask that because I've read an opinion by Senator Ibrahim Shekarau, former governor, former senator, in which he said, look, the coalition will be making a mistake if the emphasis is on individuals rather than political parties. And that so far, what we're hearing is a meeting of individuals. Nasir Rufai, Atiku, Peter Obi, going to visit people, going to attend events. And his argument is that, look, this is not about individuals. For you to form a proper coalition, you need to carry the political parties along. Even the Social Democratic Party, is now saying, well, we are not part of this merger. PDP governors have said, no, we are not going to be part of it. So how do you form a coalition?
So what we are saying is that let the dialogue continue. I was privileged to be a spokesperson in 2023 election. We came on board about 3 months to the time. 3 months to the time, and we overwhelmed the whole system. And you're talking about more than 2 years. The people are the residue of power in a democracy. In 24 hours, if they make up their mind on something and they insist on it, that's the end of the whole thing. What is keeping Tinubu in office now? Because for me, he's already out. What is keeping him in office? What is making people to defect to APC is because of their belief that we are not a nation of law and justice, but a nation ruled by an individual. They believe that if Tinubu sanctions you, no matter what the people think, you are already in there. Let's take the case of Delta State. You understand that Ned Nwoko said that his governor is not a performing governor, and that his governor has not seen the light and has been antithetical to the development of his people. And this was the reason he entered APC. Remember that Omo Agege, for instance, has been nourishing the ambition to be the governor of Delta State. And he also is in APC, welcoming people in. Remember that Festus Keyamo has not been a fan to Omo Agege. And you know what? Oborowere himself, fearing that these people will now use that federal might against him, said the best strategy now, because he has not given us any economic, political, or social indices that APC is performing that made him to join APC. He said he is joining APC too. Why? Self-preservation, which is the law of nature in a state of nature. And now, what do you think will happen in Delta State? You want to tell Omo Agege to throw away his gubernatorial ambition? You may have something else coming. It is easier to steal the mace in the National Assembly than for Omo Agege to give up his gubernatorial ambition. And are you telling Senator Ned Nwoko to now go and fall for Oborowere that he has declared persona non grata in Delta State? So APC is already imploding and will continue to implode until they are blown to smithereens.
Our biggest challenge that has brought us to where we are now is the lack of ideology in politics. And what's the root cause of that? The root cause is all of these mergers and coalitions of strange bedfellows that come together for the purposes of being able to take power. So what you're describing with APC sounds like an occupational hazard that will befall whatever coalition you're all putting together. Strange bedfellows, again, coming together strategically to try and take power. It sounds like you're committing the same sin.
When APC came together to form APC, they were the strangest of fellows. People from New PDP, from half portion of APGA, from CPC, from ANPP, and all other ACN. They were the strangest of fellows. But yet, they were able to make the commensurate sacrifice. They were able to know that they have a common enemy in the ruling PDP. And they pocketed their individual preferences and went for the common good of them. Remember, the whole idea of setting up a political party is to protect the interest of your members. They were able to harness themselves very well, organized a primary for their presidential candidates, all of them, in a purported free and fair election. And when somebody emerged, they supported the person.
Mr. Bayo Ononuga, spokesperson for President Tinubu, I said, look, all this coalition politics is dead on arrival. He has also said that, in fact, Nigerians should praise President Tinubu and praise the APC. That the reason everybody is trying to join the APC It's because the APC is promoting democracy and serving the people's interests. He also made the point that in any case, politicians will always move from one party to the other, and they have the freedom of thought, speech, assembly, association, as you well know. Do you think that Mr. Ononuga is saying something to people like you?
Well, I am surprised you're still taking such comments from such people very seriously. A man who called citizens of Nigeria aliens in their own country. A man who Tinubu is even more sincere than. At least Tinubu has acknowledged in some fora that things are difficult and he takes responsibility. But this is a man that pushes responsibility to every other person except this government. The greatest liability of this president is a media aide like Bayo Ononuga. The World Bank report will say something. The inflation will say something. And they will go and rebase. Have you ever seen where they are rebasing inflation? Inflation means the rate of increase in prices of commodities and services over a period of time. And this government, I bought a bag of rice, for instance, in December, 109,000. And in March, I bought it the same price. And this government said they have rebased inflation and reduced inflation from 34% to 24%. I am not aware of any economics that performs like that. I know you rebase GDP when there are some areas you have not captured, which you are recapturing, and then you are rebasing inflation. What a dubious government.
And this last interview
He didn't go alone to see the president. He didn't also go alone.
is a TVC exclusive on the crisis in Rivers State.
Was there.
Looks like the Tinubu men have finally got this one done, like they did in Lagos when the House of Assembly went through an unprecedented crisis. Watch.
So once your interest is protected, I think it's all business as usual. So
no permanent interest. And people are wondering how, these two men were even able to see eye to eye. And they are beginning to even maybe ask some questions or begin to imagine who brokered these meeting between Nyesom Wike and Fubara, and who also brokered the meeting between. Well, I heard it was at his instance that he asked to see President Bola Tinubu.
But of course, he didn't go alone.
Okay, to meet Wike or to meet President
Both. He didn't go alone to see the president, and he didn't also go alone to meet with Wike. Okay, he went with the governor of Ebonyi State was there. The governor of Ogun State, Dapo Abiodun was there. And then the former governor of Ogun State, Olusegun Osoba, was there. They took him to Wike's house. And when he got in there, he walked straight to Wike's living room, because that's a house that he's used to, he's familiar with. It's a familiar terrain. So that's the truth of the matter. So those who ought to have known, some even doubted, the very close persons were saying it didn't happen because he didn't even carry them along. I mean, there are times when you are, in crisis, you just tell yourself, look, I need to do this. So now, but the funny thing is that the people that took him for that meeting are all APC people. There was no PDP there. So probably that's the reason why that rumor came that he's going to defect to the APC. We don't know. But again, for now, Wike is still a member of the PDP. He's not joined the APC yet, even though he's working in an APC government. But the people who took him there are APC leaders.
So would you say his party, the People's Democratic Party, failed him?
Did they really fail him? I think that he just decided to walk away. Maybe he's also not comfortable with what's going on with the party. You see the party is also in crisis. You see Okowa that, was a running mate to Atiku in the last election, has just defected. The Delta governor has defected. So there comes a time in a man's life when you make some calculations without even asking the next person. Even when your wife asks you, you just tell your wife, well, I had to take that decision, so you just follow me. So anyone who wants to follow him will follow him, and anyone who doesn't want to follow him. But let me tell you something, no matter the reconciliation, there's a lot of sacrifices are going to be made. Some persons will be sacrificed, some persons will walk away after now. By the time he returns, you may be surprised to see that the government, a lot of persons will leave and new persons will come. But of course, there's no vacuum in government. When people go, people come in, and then, services are also rendered. So what people want to see is that Rivers State moves forward. The president, I'm sure, also wants to see that peace returns and then the state moves forward. There's a lot to be discussed beyond politics. There's a lot to be discussed beyond their personal gains and whatever they want. You know, we're talking about the economy of the state. We're talking about developing the seaports. We're talking about having quality, investors coming in. Let the investors believe that, you know, nothing will happen, because the moment the emergency rule was, put in place and IBAS came and then had to stand down every democratic process, even for contracts and all that, and what do you call it? I mean, any investor, will feel
10
threatened.
seconds,
Yeah.
10 seconds before we go. Has this emergency rule achieved much?
Well, for me, there has been
the desired,
there has been relative peace.
purpose.
At least we didn't see any more of those destruction of the national assets, the pumping of the pipelines and all that. It doesn't mean that boys are still not doing some little stuff, but that's, you know, frequency which we saw the destruction. You know, that thing was.
We've also seen protests.
And protests
against the emergency
But
rule.
the truth is that protests, even those who are protesting, sometimes they don't even know the reason why they are just probably hired to just do the bidding of those who call them. Yeah, otherwise, I mean, are they not still going to school? Are they not going to church? Are they not going to the market? Is anybody threatening them? It's still the same thing. The issues are beyond the people on the street. These issues are, first, the national asset. That's where people get it wrong. When they say the president had no right. And they didn't remember that national assets, the oil pipelines, were being destroyed in quick succession. Who knows what would have happened? I'm sure even Tantita was also worried about what happened within that period. So I think the president had achieved that. And if the emergency rule has to end, now that we have relative peace and all that,
so be it.
It might also be fragile peace anyway, like somebody said. But the important thing is that it is better than what we saw at
All right then. Obiarukwe Undukwe, founder of Citizens Quest for Truth Initiative. Thank you so much
for
your insights on this matter.